Thanks to Rebel for hosting. So I'm going to do a quick talk on getting started with React Native and TypeScript. And this story, for me, starts with my dad. And looking at this picture of my dad, you might think of him as some kind of gentleman farmer. But he worked his career in high tech 20 years ago and in a different form. So he was more on the finance side of things. And a couple of years back, he approached me and said, "Hey, Bruce, I've got this idea for an app. I've got these investments across various accounts. I don't like the idea of putting all that data in the cloud or having Google or having someone else mine it. I'd rather just have that content on my device. I want to run on iPad and on iPhone, and basically build it in a secure way. Don't necessarily send the data to a server, just keep it on the device." So I thought this is an interesting problem. It doesn't sound all that tricky to solve. At the time, I was doing a lot of mobile applications for my friend Simon for work, building a lot of phone gap apps. I was quite tired of working with Simon, so I thought I'd try something new and try a bit of React Native. So that's kind of how the story started for me. So why might you pick React Native to build a mobile application? I kind of summed it up in a few reasons here. The ability to build cross-platform native applications with JavaScript. If you're already building your websites with React, your apps with React, it just kind of makes sense. There's a lot of reuse of that skill set. It is everything that you love about React, building the components and so on. I'll give you a demo. I'm going to do a bit of live coding. It looks almost exactly the same, aside from a few different primitives instead of the DOM elements that you're used to. Provides a very slick development workflow that I haven't really found rival in other mobile app development platforms, and a really thriving community. Recently, Facebook has been seeing to put a whole bunch of new folks on the project, and they have a big initiative that's very open on GitHub about kind of asking people what are the pain points and how can we as Facebook contribute to making those better. So that's a big part for me. And why might you use something like TypeScript in combination with React Native or just React itself? So I think the big point for TypeScript is that it allows you to catch problems as you code instead of when us JavaScript developers would traditionally catch the problems, which is when we get refresh in our browser. So that is huge. Additionally, the type support allows your JavaScript to scale, and what I mean by that is not in terms of number of users, but in terms of the size of your team or the size of your code base. A TypeScript project will, I think, in practice, it worked for me, has scaled better in that way as well. Provides IntelliSense support in your editor, things like autocomplete that you may not particularly be used to coming from building JavaScript code with other languages. And it too has a thriving community. So many of the existing libraries and pieces that you would use, modules that you'd use to build a React Native or a React app may not have TypeScript type definitions, but you can often find them built by a third party or built by the developer of the library as well, and install those and have the type support for third-party code as well. So what I wanted to do in this demo, I really am a fan of doing live coding, so we're going to get right into it. Initialize a React Native project with TypeScript. That's kind of how you get started. Let's start there. You're going to run it on the iOS simulator, which you do unfortunately need an Apple computer to do, but it does support Android, so if you have Windows, you can do the same with the Android development tools. We're going to write a new component, and we're going to debug it with VS Code, which is an editor you perhaps you're using. So let's do it. So I wanted to do this earlier, but who is actually using React Native? Brian is. Hey, nice. This is a crowd that is ready to receive this knowledge. Excellent. And not be too judgy of my code. So let's begin. So how you might actually start a React Native project is you get the terminal, which is here somewhere. Let's look at the docs. There we go. And there's a React Native CLI similar to create React Native app. Is that font size okay? And you would simply React Native init, add name of your application. So all right, Ottawa. React Native Auto, I guess just React Auto. And you would give it a template, and you give it a TypeScript template name. Now off we go. So we'll walk you through creating a new React Native project in this directory. So this is going to take a little while, so we're not actually going to wait for it. I've done this already, so let's just go into, what's the font size? It's not component, so we'll go into workspace and my app, which is one I've already bootstrapped. We'll just go ahead and open that right up in code. I am a fan of code. So Microsoft is rather, TypeScript is backed by Microsoft, and Visual Studio Code is a Microsoft product. So they work, a free product I should add, so they work very well together. So what you get in this little application is, it's quite simple. Of course, if you look at node modules, it's not very simple there, but the actual code that you're going to be tracking in your source control system, it's really a bare bones app that they give you. And it looks just like existing React web code, aside from these primitives that you'll see in the render function. So here we have a view, and this is from the React Native package, React Native module. Oops. And also you'll see text. So instead of using something like a div or a span, you would use a text element, and then the contents of that element would become, it's like the contents of the div, and it would be printed out on the screen. So this is the template, and that is, aside from installing Node and installing the React Native CLI, that is really what you need to do to get started with TypeScript React Native application. So we're going to do the cooking show effect here, where we put something into the oven and we take it out completely baked immediately. So I'm going to open up another project that we can, I guess I can fill this. That would have finished very soon, I'm sure. So we'll open up another little app here that I have prepared for the next part of the demo. And I'm going to need the simulator for this as well. I'll just run this over to the right.
Can you bump your font size a bit?
In the editor?
Yeah.
For sure.
And then in 1997.
Okay, so this is a little application. It takes a second to start up. So while I'm talking, I'll just go ahead and hit play from code. The code has there's a React Native extension you can add to code, and that gives you things like debugging, and it'll run the Metro packager, which will bundle up all your code in such a way that React Native can consume it. So it's really nice, it works really well with code, so we just have to hit play. It's already something running, so we're going to stop the already running one, play again. And what is happening in the background here is that we have quite a lot going on. The TypeScript compiler is running. It's also running React Native Run iOS, which is using Xcode on the Mac to actually put together an application to run on my device. Additionally, it's running the bundle that I talked about, so it's going to bundle up all our JavaScript code into a bundle and allow and ship it to the device, so we can do things like, during development, mind you, actually just reload the app. Let's see, what's that? Keyboard shortcut. So if you do the shape gesture, you can bring up the React Native debug menu. So a few things here. We want to make sure we have remote JS debugging on and hot reloading on as well. That's perfect. So we're good to go. So this is, again, a development build, so you wouldn't have that menu on a production app that you actually ship. So the next piece of the demo is I want to actually write a little component for this basic list app. What this list app will do is it has a number of lists that you can create, and then you can add items to the list. You can mark them as complete, and so on, and close them and go back. And it has a few other features which I won't get into, but you can link it up to Dropbox and things like that. I essentially built this app because I didn't want to open source the actual app that I built for my father, but I wanted to talk about some of the cooler features that I built into that app and write some blog posts about them, so I put together this basic app which shows off some of the neater technical aspects. Let's get into the code. So similar to the skeleton that was bootstrapped earlier, this was bootstrapped from the same template. We would have that app.tsx, and from there, it has a bit more code in it. It has a render function, and it's rendering this all list component. This is corresponds to this page. If we dig in a little bit further, there is a modal, which opens when we hit any of the lists. It'll open up and show us our list items that are still either done or to do as part of that list. And let's say we want to add a new component right above the delete list button here, just to give us a summary of this list. We'll call it list status. So let's find, here is the view list modal, and let's locate. Okay, so here we go. We have this Touchable opacity is a word for a button that kind of changes shade when you actually tap it. So this is our delete list item here. And you can see, just a quick aside, because I have hot loading on, if I were to change that text and hit save, you'll see it updates immediately on the simulator. That was that select development workflow I was talking about. And that works if you have a real device on the same network as well. You can build a development build and do that same reload. Pretty awesome, in my opinion. Let's get that back. So let's add a new component immediately above this this button. So JSX, we can't have two siblings. A lot of fragment here, and I'll put my component immediately below. Just stuff it in with some text. So list status, hit save. We should see that item right there. We'll center it a little bit later, but we did have our list status item show up. So let's go ahead and rough in this component. Say new file, list status.tsx. So you probably use JSX. TSX is just a TypeScript file that contains JSX. That indicates that it should have that JSX processing done on it. We'll import React from React. And we'll export simple functional component status. And please tell me if I'm typing something silly. Text list status. There we go. Here, missing an import for arrow. Yes, thank you. I need that for React Native. I need my arrow. Hit save there. And now we'll actually use that component from our list item. List item modal, rather. View list modal. List status. Okay. There we go. So we got our exclamation points. So that's all good. So this is where some of the nice TypeScript features are going to come in. So if I had some props that I was passing to this component, and I expected the list items to be present in those props. Previously, I could have used the prop types from React if I wanted to do that. But a really nice way of doing it with TypeScript is you can simply define an interface. Interface props. And I could say I'm expecting a property called list items, and it is going to be an array of list items. And list item is a type that I've defined in my app, which I need to import. Here we go. And then I give my props parameter, give it a type of props. And then that can be called anything. It doesn't have to be called props. So there we go. Now I can be confident that this list items, which will be an array of list item objects, will be present on props, or else my TypeScript should complain. So indeed, if we go back, we'll see list status, property list items on type, but required in type props. Okay, excellent. So now I can say list items is equal to, and I believe it's here above. Yeah, so the items corresponding to this list is this list items object. It comes from a little SQLite database. So I'll pass that one through. And now let's just do something interesting with this. We'll say const not done count is equal to take the list items, and I don't need to have an intimate knowledge of this object. I can just simply hit the dot, and I can figure out it's an array. So the array functions are all there. So if I call a filter and I want to make it knows already that the value is going to be a list item. So item, throw another arrow in here, and I'm going to filter. Basically, I'm going to filter out all the items that are not done. So when item, I just hit dot again, and it knows about my object. It knows there's a done Boolean. Excellent. Say not done, and then I'll just put a length on that to actually get the number of items that are not done yet. And it knows, it can infer that that is going to be a number. See if I did here. So now we can do something like, we can say, you have not done count to go. And maybe let's give this a little bit of a style just to show you what style in React Native looks like. Just take some object. You can say things like align, or text align rather. Text align center. Fast. We'll give it a bit of a margin. Margin top 20. Save. There we go. You have 0 tasks to go. Excellent. So let's go back and try a different list that actually has some items in it. Spring cleaning. So you have 3 tasks to go. 2, 1, 0, and of course we could do something a little fancier here. Not done count.
The main concept of
0. We did, of course, tidy this up a little bit, but we'll just do it quick and dirty. Turn. So when all the items are complete, we have that message that appears. So boom, you're done. That was kind of a whirlwind component that we created. Any questions on that? Yes.
So I use React Web, and typically we avoid like inline styling like that, like the flag. Is there any sort of elements that you can use to, or like, you know, obviously there's going to be some like node packages that you can use to do that, or anything like that? What would you prefer?
There is a built-in module that's part of React Native. So you can do something like on styles is equal to style sheet dot create and pass this an object. So in this object you could have a number of styles, kind of like a style sheet. So you could have status, and this would be an object, and this would have items here. And then you would refer to this in the style prompt. You would say styles dot status and so on. That's another way to do it, where you could actually share the styles, and you could have a file that includes those styles in a separate spot. That's what I've typically done. It's complaining, but this is the built-in way of doing it with React. I don't know if there's like a style component equivalent, but I'm sure there are some third-party options. There are as well. This is the very minimal style. There are a number of UI libraries. Show is one of them. React Native Elements is another that gives you kind of a nice starting point that you can then kind of theme and customize your own brand, your own look and feel. So it doesn't always. This is a very ugly looking app, but it doesn't have to be that way. All right. So just like that, we made a pretty simple component. We were able to specify what the component needs by virtue of a TypeScript interface. The TypeScript I don't think really added all that much code, and the code really, what I want to emphasize with this is it's not all that different from like a React Web project. You're writing your components in the same way. You're just using a number of different primitives where you would have had the DOM elements with a React Web project. All right. Do you use any of my emergency slides? That's good. So, just to go over what we did, we created a React Native project with TypeScript, because we created it in Spirit and jumped to one that was already done. We ran it, we wrote a new component, and debugged it with VS Code. One thing I didn't mention is you can hit breakpoints, set breakpoints directly in VS Code, and they will be hit, and you can inspect the scope and all the variables that are in that scope. So it's a really, really nice way of building a native mobile application. Next steps. So you can try it out. I don't know the dev domain yet, but I think I'll get one. That's a good deal. It's super low budget link shortener. This will take you to a blog post that I wrote on this exact subject. Or hit me up on Twitter. Let me know if you have any questions. Happy to chat React Native. And I'll be around today as well if you have any questions on this evening. Or if we have time now, we're doing on that time.
We're good.
We're good. Any questions now? Yes.
Can you leverage any, I'm speaking as a non-mobile dev whatsoever, but like, can you leverage any of the built-in like iOS view components at all, or are you living entirely in kind of JavaScript land?
You're typically living in JavaScript land. So that view component and that text component that I use are a React Native abstraction that has its own native implementation for iOS and Android. But with some libraries, in particular, there's a I think it was Airbnb or Wix that made a navigation library that was native device navigation for iOS and Android. The alternative to that is kind of faking it in the JavaScript space, which I've done in my app. I found to be totally performant. But I think where you notice that is if you have an app that is native first and then you add in a few React Native screens to it, and you really need it to match perfectly, then you use a library like that where you're actually dealing with the native controls. So there are ways to do that. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.